Now let's get going, folks, and we'll begin like we will every day here on Menzoid Mornings with something that's really grinding my gears. Time now for the Menzoid monologue. Don't mean to be harsh, but why does Ontario Provincial Police Commissioner Chris Lewis still have a job? After all, heading up the OPP would suggest that job one is law enforcement. However, judging by Commissioner Lewis's actions, or should I say inaction, regarding numerous law-breaking Native protesters, perhaps it's time for this testicular challenge commissioner to look for a more suitable career. Something in the realm of social work, perhaps. Because, hey, despite that shiny badge adorning his uniform, Commissioner Lewis inexplicably doesn't seem all that keen these days on actually enforcing the laws of the land. After all, the OPP rank and file continually stand down in Caledonia, allowing at times an entire community to be terrorized. But it's all about keeping the peace, as the refrain goes, and so it is that non-natives in Caledonia are arrested for walking on public property or planting a Canadian flag upon a vacant lot. Meanwhile, when natives commit vandalism, arson, and even assault, well, nothing to see here, folks. Move along, move along. These days, elements of Caledonia disease have spread to other parts of our Dominion thanks to Occupy 2.0, aka Idle No More. And true to form, when faced with native lawlessness, the OPP is proving that it is ineffectual at making arrests if the lawbreaker is Aboriginal. This odious double standard was recently hammered home big time when Ontario Superior Court Justice David Brown had to grant an emergency injunction to remove protesters who were illegally blocking a CN rail line. Now, the cops are supposed to enforce such judgments, but fat chance, folks. You see, even though OPP officers are armed and have the rule of law on their side, it was determined it was simply far too dangerous to remove those protesters. After all, there were thousands of natives blocking that rail line. Well, no, actually it was hundreds. Sorry, would you believe dozens? Okay, it was only about 15 troublemakers. Nevertheless, the OPP pulled another Caledonia, which is to say, they decided not to enforce the law. And they decided to ignore a court order to boot. Said Commissioner Lewis, quote, "The OPP are not going to solve hundreds of years of legal issues by marching down the road and fighting with a group of First Nations people, some of which are often women, children, and elderly people. A peaceful several-hour blockade, as wrong as it is, pales in comparison to a full shutdown of all major highways, railways, and therefore trade routes across Canada for days or weeks. Hundreds of First Nations territories with thousands of First Nations people residing therein and in other municipalities from coast to coast do have the ability to carry that out. That doesn't make it right by any means, but it is reality." Wow, who does this wannabe psychic think he is? Bill Blair? After all, Toronto's police chief said more or less the same thing back in 2009 when Hogtown allowed Tamil Tiger terror supporters to take over the Gardner Expressway. The following summer, Toronto's finest were also ordered to turn a blind eye to Black Bloc protesters who were smashing retail storefront windows and even setting police cruisers ablaze during the G20 summit. But then again, I guess once you get used to not enforcing the law, it kind of becomes habit forming. But I digress. Commissioner Lewis apparently thinks the role of his officers is to interpret the nuances of social justice. He is wrong, of course, and surely he knows he's wrong. After all, the role of the police is to enforce the law, period. Yes, discretion can and should be used, but ultimately, lawbreakers must be given a choice. Either comply with the law or face the consequences. But these days, law enforcement seems to mimic Monty Hall cutting offers on let's make a deal. Sadly, we're increasingly saddled with police chiefs and commissioners who first consider who is breaking the law before enforcing the law. Apparently, they are more concerned with the PR optics rather than the actual letter of the law. And if we experienced a jump the shark moment with regard to this whiz-bang new age approach to law enforcement, surely it was the actions of Sarnia Police Sergeant Jeff Hodgson. Check out this video, folks. Yes, your eyes are not deceiving you, for that was indeed Sergeant Sergeant Hodgson making like the second coming of Ringo Starr. Incredibly, not only did this individual turn a blind eye to protesters, he actually joined in with the protesters. What these super sensitive members of the police brass don't seem to realize is this: the only thing that separates society from outright barbarism is the rule of law. If we don't have the rule of law, or if the rule of law is not enforced, then nothing distinguishes society from the law of the jungle. So again, I pose the question, can anyone kindly tell me why OPP Commissioner Chris Lewis still has a job? And that's the Menzoid monologue.